maker's father was shot and killed during the Sikh temple massacre, which delayed us a month or two. But right now, the main delay is because we're waiting for the geneticist who's doing the work on the genetic material that we got from this little possible extraterrestrial being. And if you want to see this, you can go to Sirius.neverendinglight.com. I just received in the last 2 days a report from this geneticist and a medical doctor who is the leading person in the world on skeletal deformities in children and fetuses and humans, and who literally wrote the textbook on it. And he has looked at the CAT scan and the X-rays and has concluded, number one, it is no known genetic defect. This is big news. Number two, it is not a product of conception. In other words, it is not a miscarried or aborted fetus. It's about a 5 to 7 year old. Now, this is a 6-inch tall being. It's a 5 to 7 year old being because of the bone density. We had an indication of this from the original radiologist that did, who was head of the radiographic center, that took the X-rays in a foreign country where we went in late September, early October. And she was the director of this, and she looked at this. She says, this is not a neonatal or a fetus or a miscarried, what have you. This is a being that was up and around, because look at the bone density. Well, this person, who is the world's expert in these skeletal anomalies, number one, has stated that this is no known syndrome, and number two, is very definitely a 5 to 7 year old. So we're almost certainly dealing with a humanoid of unknown origin. The genetic work is just now getting underway because some of the equipment that was needed, it's being done at one of the top Ivy League university genetic labs, was being held up in customs for about a month or two. All the equipment is there now, and we're beginning to start the genetic testing. So we hope in the next month we will get all of that information wrapped up. But in a sense, the genetic testing, since there's no database of ET genes, would be a process of exclusion anyway. And the report from this other expert, who is the most renowned person in the world on skeletal deformities, is probably going to be the most definitive thing we're going to have. And I'm here to announce today that this is really quite an astounding discovery, that in fact this little 6-inch tall, 2-arm, 2-leg being is in fact a humanoid that was in the 5 to 7 year old range. If it was a male, it would have been more like a 5-year-old. If it was female, probably more like 7 years old. Now, this is assuming Earth development and Earth calcification of bones, et cetera, and so on and so forth. But the point being, it is not a deformed fetus, because it would not have that level of calcium in it. And we suspected that from the beginning, but it wasn't until we got these renowned experts to look at the actual X-rays and CAT scans that we were able to determine that, and that was just reported back to me in the last couple of days. So this is incredible news, in fact, very big scientific news.
Very exciting. More like that. Breaking ground, Doctor, breaking ground.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, I mean, this is exactly what has to happen, and it's my understanding the area of the world where this little being was found, there are others. And at some point, if we were able to get the research funds to do it, we would take an expedition back to that area, because I suspect there's more where this one came from. In fact, we know there are. It's also in an area where there have been many of these UFOs seen going in and out of the Andes. It's from South America, and many of the native tribal people have reported these very small creatures. It was funny because today, and I was in meditation, I was thinking of, I feel like Gulliver's Travels, because this being, if the adults are only a foot or so tall, and I'm 6'4" and weigh, I'm a bodybuilder, I weigh 230 pounds, and I'm 6'4", I'd be like this giant. But on the other hand, we know there are accounts of ETs that are in the 18 to 30 feet tall, where I would be tiny like one of these creatures. So, the universe is a big place, and it's almost certain that there's going to be creatures that are a few inches tall and creatures that are 20 and 30 feet tall. And in fact, there are ancient texts that talk about these sorts of things, which used to be regarded as sort of a mythology. And now we're beginning to realize, well, it wasn't such mythology. It was actually based on some things that people actually saw.
Yeah, well, the angels or the Anunnaki, I mean, as you know, our whole world history is dotted with accounts of some kind of more intelligent humanoid figures coming to Earth and going back, coming and going. I mean, it's all over the world.
Right. And some of them may have been actually from the angelic realm, which is separate from physical planets, but so people shouldn't confuse those. But you could understand that if 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, people were to encounter some luminous craft coming from outer space with these different kinds of creatures coming out of them, that they would consider them gods or angels or what have you, because they would have no point of reference. In fact, I always tell the story of in the World War II. I don't know if you've read this book, Stephen, about the cargo cults of the Pacific, where when we were going to some of these islands in the Pacific in World War II and landing our little propeller planes out there, that the native peoples had never seen Western civilization or a white person or a plane or anything. And they were convinced that not the occupants so much, but the planes were from the gods. And after we left, they actually built statuary, and they actually built temples based on
kind of worship the airplane.
Yes, they were, and they were made like airplanes out of sticks and wood and stone and stuff. And so, it's very interesting that. It's sort of like The Gods Must Be Crazy, that old movie that was so funny, where a Coke bottle's thrown out over this tribe in Africa, and it becomes this point of great contention. But so I always caution people about that, and that we have to take a step back and say, well, wait a minute, if we're dealing with a civilization that's several 100,000 to several million years more developed than we are, almost every manifestation of their technology and culture will look like a miracle or mystical to us.
Yeah.
Because if I went back, I live up the road here from Thomas Jefferson's house. If I could go back and visit Thomas Jefferson at Monticello and show him my iPhone, I'd probably be burned at the stake at a witch. Well, maybe in Salem, Massachusetts. I don't know about. I think Thomas Jefferson was more open-minded. Plus, apparently,
he actually found a craft. There's a notice in the historical record it says Thomas Jefferson was witness to a disc-shaped craft. Did you know that?
Yes, and I have no doubt that they were spotted. And it's all through medieval art and the Renaissance period where these were represented. And these civilizations have been around since the beginning of humankind. And we're at this time now where we're finally at the point where we can understand it, acknowledge it, and most excitingly become ambassadors and have contact openly with these civilizations. And this is what it's not for just it's not for just Hillary Clinton and a few people at the State Department to do. By the way, they're not doing it. So it's up to us to do it, and that's what's exciting. It's very much grassroots, and that's why we encourage people to get involved and do what you did. Just give it a try, and when you do, and you're aware of it, and you put out that thought and invite these ETs to make contact, people are kind of astonished how easy it is to do and how much these civilizations they're actually waiting. I've been told they're eager and waiting for humans to extend the hand of invitation to them.
And so we are, and so it is. Hey, one of the things I thought would be valuable to share, I don't know if you remember, but before I dedicated my life to writing and teaching meditation, I was an investment banker and a venture capital analyst.
Oh, yes.
And one of the things I notice is with all these new technologies like free energy devices and things, you need to be real careful who you accept money from.
Oh, absolutely.
Some companies have gotten in a sticky situation because they got money from DARPA. And DARPA is actually kind of the venture fund for the Department of Defense. And once you get in bed with them, they start to control you and your technologies. You got to be real careful of the people you associate with, because money seems to corrupt these new technologies. People use it to gain control of the technology and then kill it, but never gets out into the field.
Oh, yes, we're very aware of that. We've studied this, and in fact, Dr. Thomas Bearden and I have done an exhaustive look at how many of these have fallen into the clutches through these sort of business shenanigans. And so that's why I think you have to, be very careful about what organization controls and even puts funds in and what their rights, if any, are. My view of it is that the people who have the money should have no control over the development and the outcome of the technologies. Now, that is not what normally happens in venture capital. I call it vulture capitalism. But you have to, you're right. You're 100% right, Stephen. You have to be very, very careful, which is another reason why we would like to see the film create sort of a zeitgeist in society about this, and then have the public put the funds in to support the research and development and bring it out, rather than it coming from, some big corporate venture capitalist or what have you, unless the person was really an angel funder, because the problem is exactly what you described. So many of these technologies that have come along over the years have actually gotten gobbled up and then destroyed by the people who got involved financially, because they end up being straw men who are actually representing the cabal.
Well, that's what Morgan did with Tesla. I mean, and that's right. That's happened many, many times since, and even recently, in my own experience, I saw where people would come in and say, well, now we got the technology, and they would either just sit on it or they would kill it.
Right.
And if you tried to pull it out, they would have lawyers on you. They will go after you with everything they got.
Correct. That's right. So, and that's why this has to be done. You have to learn from history, or you're going to be doomed to repeat it. And you're very correct in your assessment of that.
The other thing it's good to know, and I'm sure you know this, Steve, but for the sake of the audience, is that the entire Internet is watched. There is no privacy on the Internet. It was bought and paid for by the Department of Defense. They admit that virtually all communication going through fiber optic lines is watched. They have splitter cables at all the points of presence, and they can watch everything coming in or out. Everything that happens, you have no privacy.
That's right, which means that this is why I laugh when people say, oh, I'm going to develop one of these things and do it privately. I said, no, you're not. I said, you just don't understand what the technologies are that are going to be watching you. So my view of it is to turn that around. See, we did this with Disclosure Project. Everyone was going, oh, you need to be very secretive. I said, no, we need to be very open. So in other words, it's like Aikido. You take that energy, you flip it around. Exactly. And so their strong suit is that they're very secretive, they're masters of the dark and of spying, but you don't buy into that. What you do is say, fine, but you know what? The whole world's watching this too, along with the National Security Agency. So tough kazungas. This is what's going to happen. So, the big mistake that a lot of these inventors do, and a lot of these groups that try to do this, is that they do it secretively, and they think that they're off the radar scope. And I said, look, you could be in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and the guys who want to know what you're doing, they're going to know what you're doing. They're going to know. So don't delude yourself. And this is why, by being as open and transparent, and also in the R&D effort to have the public involved and to have the public know about everything we're doing when we're doing it. I had people writing me and attacking me when I was talking about going to get the genetic material from this little possible ET body, saying, don't talk about it, keep it secret. And I said, look, the people I need to worry about know if I sneeze. But if the public knows about it and the plane I'm on gets blown up, then it becomes a scandal. So I said, I think we're better served by being very open about this.
I agree. Well, I'm going to pray for you anyway.
Oh, yeah, well, do. Thank you. And, it was great. I hope to see you again soon. And by the way, you're right there in Southern California. We're going to have our Los Angeles premiere of the film, we hope, in March or April. It's really being held up by getting the rest of the tests done. But I hope to see you there. You're going to
send me an invite?
Of course.
Good. By the way, my own movie just came out. I don't know if
Wonderful.
you know, I'm in a movie called 3 Magic Words. It just premiered in L.A., London, and Tokyo. I'm in there with Neil Donald Walsh and some other what they thought were new thought leaders. So look for 3 Magic Words. in theaters soon.
Oh, fun. That sounds great. Well, there are a lot of people with our similar interests coming forward. Stephen Alton, another Steve, who's written book Phobos and a lot of novels that include information about Disclosure Project, has gotten involved. And of course, I mentioned Thomas Jane, the actor, and our